It is ACC Basketball Wednesday here on a live edition of the Desmond Johnson Show, exclusively on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, tobaccoroadsportsradio.com. You can catch this on the YouTube channel for Tobacco Road Sports Radio multiple times during the week, right around lunchtime, right around about 12:30 or so. I got my guy Conor ONeill in the house from Devils Illustrated, Deacons Illustrated, my man R.L. Bynum in the house from the Tar Heel Tribune. It's not going to be ACC Big Four because I'm not really feeling like talking about the Wolfpack today. So it's going to be Carolina, Duke, Wake Forest, State of the Union. We're going to get all three of them, get you ready for the rest of your week. And later on this week, we'll give you a preview of the divisional round for the NFL. But right now, it's ACC Hoops, baby. Let's go.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
Yeah, welcome to the Carolinas. Everywhere you go, the sky is Carolina blue, the finest. Live action, feedback, the city needs that. I've been number one, no cap. Here's the recap. Adrenaline is my addiction. I'm about to relapse. Step on the turf if you won't and get your weed whacked. I'm going harder than a martyr on the slaughter end. It's the heart of man, that's a rap like a cardigan. I'm breaking records, it's fourth and inches, I count the seconds. The over-under's my roar of thunder, my secret weapon. Yeah, the game is to be told. I don't break, I break modes. Follow me on Tobacco Road.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
And again, welcome to the Desmond Johnson Show here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, tobaccoroadsportsradio.com. Follow us on all our social media platforms. You can follow us on X at Tobacco Radio. You can follow us on Instagram at Tobacco Road Sports Radio. And of course, we're on Facebook as well. Joining me right now from Devils Illustrated and Deacons Illustrated, publisher Conor ONeill in the house, and beat writer for the Tar Heels for Tar Heel Tribune, R.L. Bynum in the house. Guys, I wanted to get into, usually this is the time of the year when we get into NFL playoffs where we start to divert our attention more towards conference play and college basketball for fans that like to skip around. Really after Christmas for me, it's kind of really when we really start looking at everything. And we've had some interesting things going on. I want to start off with the Demon Deacons because I feel like they're kind of getting slept on a little bit in terms of record and what they're doing. They're near the top of the ACC, 12-4 overall as we stand right now, 4-1 in conference play. They won 5 out of their last 6 games. They're at home versus Stanford tonight at 6:30 p.m. At the Joel. That is on ESPN News. A little bit later on this week, Wake is at Virginia Tech Saturday at 2 p.m. That's on ACC Network. And they're at home versus Carolina next Tuesday. Next week might be the week when we figure out what exactly Wake Forest is. But I'll start with you, Conor. Is Wake a threat to actually challenge in the ACC? Like I feel like they've been kind of quietly just kind of motoring along winning games lately.
I think we're really going to be able to answer that in 2 weeks. I think this week is kind of the warm-up with a little bit of a tough game against Stanford. Like Stanford is a testy team. They have, I think, the second best player in the ACC with their center, Maxime Reynaud. He does everything well. And then a trip to Virginia Tech, as bad as the Hokies have been this year, it is a tough place to win games. Castle is a great atmosphere. This Wake team was underwhelming, I think, in the first month and a half of the season. I think that's the best way to put it. Like their offense really struggled. Hunter Salas is capable, but he's not ideally playing point guard.
I think Connor's freezing up there on us. Let's see if he comes back here. Wake again.
What?
There he goes.
I guess internet might be a little fluky.
Yeah. What was the last thing you just said there, Conor? I don't know if you can hear. Can you still hear us?
Damn.
I don't know. Can you still? I don't know if you can see us either.
I'm back.
Oh, there you are.
Guys.
Yeah. Can you see us? You good?
Yeah.
Okay. Go.
Sorry.
Repeat the last thing you said.
Wake was underwhelming in the first month and a half of the season. And it really had everything to do with their offense. The defense has played at a high level. Like it's been the best defense that Steve Forbes has had in Winston-Salem. But they've had to figure things out offensively. And there's some hope that they have. Tyler Johnson has started the last 3 games of point guard. Him playing the point allows Hunter Salas to move off the ball, where he was a nearly 20-point-a-game scorer last year and was an all-ACC player. He's more comfortable playing off the ball. He's better playing off the ball. And it's led to their offense looking the way it kind of should have looked all season. There's you can spend all the time you want regretting that Wake wasn't doing the things that they're doing now in the first month and a half, because their metrics would be better. Like they'd be talked about a lot differently if they had looked like this for the whole season. But right now, I mean, there's still plenty of season left, and if this is the type of offense that they're going to play, yes, to wind it all the way back to your original question, I do think if this is the type of offense they get, this can be a team that finishes top 4 or 5 in the ACC by the end of the season.
They're sitting in 4th right now. Of course, Duke is the leader at 7-0 in conference play. You got Clemson at 6-1, Louisville at 6-1, Wake and Carolina at 4-1. We'll get to RL with North Carolina in just a bit. Then you have a logjam with Pitt, SMU, and Stanford at 3-2. I'm looking at the wins that Wake has had so far this year. I'm having a hard time picking out a marquee win. Is there a marquee win in your mind that they've had so far this year, or is that going to be later on here in the ACC slate?
The Michigan win is aging beautifully for Wake. It's a neutral court win. The inside baseball to that is Michigan was still figuring out how to play with Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf on the court at the same time. They've run that to perfection now. They're going to be a top 4 seed, I would think, in the NCAA tournament. That's going to be. It's either going to be Wake's best resume win when you come to NCAA tournament time and when you're comparing resumes, or it's going to be one of the best. You're fortunate and you're unfortunate when you're Wake Forest. You have 2 games against Duke every year. They haven't won in Durham since Tim Duncan's senior season. So that's always that carrot out there that they're chasing, that if they were to ever crack the ice and win in Durham, it'd be, marquee top Ken Palm A+ type resume win. They've also beat Duke at home the last 2 years. So, John Shire's last win came when he was filling in for Mike Krzyzewski in that final season in 2022. So they've got some chances. I mean, the state of the ACC means they're not going to have too many of them. But they'll have a couple chances here, and 2 of them are next week when Carolina comes to town and when Duke comes to town later that week.
Yeah, that seems kind of unfair that they've got them booked that way for back to back. At least they're at home for both of those. But then I imagine it also means that down the road here, I don't know. Actually, Wake only plays Carolina once this year. Is that right? Or yeah. So they don't have to do that again, going the opposite direction down 40 or whatnot. But out of all of the Wake Forest roster right now, in this week, and just thinking about the past 5 or 6 games, Connor, is there a player that you would tell outsiders outside of Wake Forest fans to keep an eye on over the next couple of games that's just been playing really well that might not be like a household name?
Juke Harris, their freshman wing, is really coming on. He had some good moments early in the season, but he also had some games where he looked a little overwhelmed, overmatched. He had freshman moments. I mean, it's to be expected, but along with Tyler starting at the point, Juke has really come through December, and Wake had 2 10-day breaks in December where they could really dig in and kind of really work some things out, confidence wise for some guys and offensive, X's and O's type stuff. And Juke has come on the other side of that looking like he is I don't know that he would make a all ACC freshman team. If there was a second team, maybe, but I think the ACC only does one freshman, all ACC freshman team.
Yeah, I think so.
He's coming on strong. He plays multiple positions. He's 6'7". He has great length. He's kind of a pain if he's guarding you. You can't get around him. He's quick. He competes. He's a little slight. I mean, he is a freshman, but he's hold himself accountable on the defensive end, and that's really helped them in the last couple weeks or so.
So we've got Wake 12-4 overall, 4-1 in conference play, taking on Stanford tonight at 6:30 p.m. on ESPN News. And then they're at Virginia Tech Saturday at 2 p.m. on ACC Network. Then next week they've got Carolina. Then they got Duke right behind that at the Joel in Winston-Salem. So we'll keep an eye on Wake Forest. RL from Tyler Tribune, UNC 11-6 overall, 4-1 in conference play. They've won 5 of their last 6 games. They've won 3 straight games. Has Hubert Davis figured this out, or is this just like them sliding into the part of the schedule where they were supposed to be winning these games anyway? What are your thoughts on this?
That's the question. The caliber of competition has not been great of late. Connor was talking about all freshman team. A lock would be Ian Jackson for sure. And there's no telling where Carolina would be without him. I mean, his ability to take defenders off the dribble, consistently hit perimeter shots, draw fouls. I mean, he's hit a 3-pointer in every game, hit 5 against NC State.
Yeah, he's been great.
His emergence the last couple of weeks has really made a difference. But I think also the defense has gotten better. They last 2 opponents, SMU and State, I think had the lowest output in a half all season against Carolina, and that's really where Hubert Davis has emphasized that, and rebounding is a way to turn things around. And he's talked about how this is one of the quietest teams around, and obviously talking on defense is important, particularly as much as UNC switches. And that's got better in the last 3 games. There were some lapses toward the end of the second half against State, but overall that's gotten better, and I think that's a big reason why they've won 3 straight, in addition to the caliber of competition going down a little bit.
It does. I'm glad you mentioned that they seem like a real quiet team, because there's not really I don't want to say there's not an alpha on the team, but there's not really a verbal, like a vocal alpha on the team. And you're used to seeing somebody of Carolina that's like the loud guy, the one that's going to be the rah-rah guy. And there's really not one on this team. You look at the makeup of the roster, most of the guys seem kind of like an Elliot Cadeau or RJ Davis or even Steph Trimble, kind of laid back, kind of let the game come to him type guys, where other than RJ, I can say RJ is one of the ones where if the game is going a certain way, he might go out there and try to grab it by the throat and go. But the rest of them, I'm not really sure. But I will say this is probably one of the worst rebounding UNC teams I can remember in some time, where it's at a point where I'm seeing guys have the ball in their hands and somehow they don't get the rebound. Like literally they're grabbing for it and it goes, they just can't grab it. They do like this and the ball goes one way or the other way and the other team runs down the court with it. Carolina's got Cal tonight, 7 o'clock, ACC Network. Stanford Saturday, 2:15 p.m. on the CW Network. And then they're at Wake Forest Tuesday at 9 o'clock on ESPN. I would imagine, RL, that Cal win or the Cal game tonight and the Stanford game on Saturday are not only must wins for Carolina, but they can't lose either, right? Because they're quad 3 games, right? Like if they lose these games, they're going to hurt them more than if they win the games, but they have to win these games, correct?
Yeah, that's the beauty of the expanded ACC. You get to play high caliber teams like Cal and Stanford. So, yeah, I mean, quad 3 games, they really have to win, and to help their net ranking, they really need to win substantially. And if they lose, it's going to be really, it's going to sink them in the net. So yeah, this is where Carolina really needs to lay down the hammer. And this team has really had a tough time putting teams away, obviously, and repeatedly. And these are 2 games where they're going to need to do that, which they really, I mean, they've shown the ability to make clutch plays at the end, but clutch plays at the end that they really shouldn't have had to make if they'd have taken care of business.
Yeah, the last 2 games, I know I said they've won 5 of their last 6 and they've won 3 straight, but the last 2 games they won on a miraculous 4-point play from Elliot Cadeau at the last second, and then Jalen Washington with a dunk and a block at the last second against NC State, and was literally the definition of a rock fight. That Carolina State game on Saturday, where it was just like, ugh, like the whole first half.
Particularly in the first half.
Yeah,
that was terrible.
Just throwing rocks at the side of the barn, pretty much. Like, I mean, it was bad. And this Carolina team too, I'm like, I understand it because they're really perimeter oriented the way the roster is, but as a Carolina lifelong fan, it's hard to watch sometimes where they're not specifically dumping the ball down into the paint to anybody, just to set up a play. It's like they're not even running plays for the post anymore. It's almost like the post players are just kind of there to clean up the rebounds, get a putback, maybe slip on a screen, that kind of thing, like what Jalen did in that state game pretty much. But they're not really running stuff, it feels like, for the post players. And that could be due to the quality of the big men that they have on this year's roster. And hopefully Bill Belichick and this splurge of NIL money will help with that next year. I was just joking. Can't remember who it was. I think it was David Glenn, actually, earlier in the week, where I was like, I really wish the portal could be open mid-season where you could just literally trade players, like have like a 2-week window where it's like, all right, guys want to move around in the middle of the season. You get one or something like that. And they could trade for like a big man, like at High Point or some place where like, they got somebody tucked away and all of a sudden this new guy sitting on the roster that's 6'11" and cures all the problems. But that doesn't work in college basketball. But it might be down the road. Who knows? So
Jalen Washington's emergence recent games has been amazing.
He has played better. Yes, I will give Jalen that. He might not have been ready in the beginning.
12 of his 21 blocks have come in the last 3 games. And obviously he won the state game with the block off of the great Cadeau pass on one end, the dunk on one end and then the block on the other.
Yeah.
So, but to your point, Jalen Washington, the ratio of times he's out on the perimeter setting screens to the times he's setting up inside is amazingly different than what Carolina fans are used to from their post players over the years.
And I always thought that Jalen could be kind of in the same mold as like a John Henson or a Bryce Johnson, where it took them. Now, granted, Henson came in at a higher pedigree coming out of high school, but Bryce Johnson was a 4-star coming out and kind of a project. So he's kind of similar to Jalen. Jalen seems to have a better outside game, but kind of built the same too. And I kind of hope their trajectory would be the same, because by the time Bryce got the senior year, he was a monster. He was a first-team All-ACC monster. And I was hoping Jalen would do that too, but they're not really using him the same way. So to your point, Jalen has played better the past couple of games, and maybe it's just confidence. Maybe they need these games just to get some confidence going so they could, figure this out completely. I haven't forgotten about the Blue Devil in the room over in the corner, Duke, just motoring through life, 15-2, 7-0. They won 11 straight games. They got they're at Boston College Saturday at 8:00. And then I realized, just due to a quirk in the schedule, I guess, they're at Wake Forest Saturday, January 25th. So they've got a whole week in between these 2 games they have coming up here. I've seen all the hype for Cooper Flag and the dunk and all that stuff. I know, Connor, you were probably there for the dunk last weekend where he did over the 7-footer guy on the breakaway. He had another one the next game, scored 40 points. Cooper Flag is legit. Is Cooper Flag the best? How do I want to phrase this? Is Cooper Flag the best freshman player in the country?
Yeah, I would say so.
Is he the best player?
I think right now with Janai Broome out for Auburn and not having a timetable on when he's going to come back from the ankle injury, I think you have to say it's Cooper. He leads Duke in, I think it's down to 5 of the 6 major categories. I can't remember. I think he got passed in steals.
Yeah.
He might have the overall lead, but not steals per game. He's more advanced offensively than I thought he would be. He has the type of impact on every area of the game that I thought he'd have, but I did not see him as a guy that could go for 40 points in a game. He's just not in watching high school games when he played for Mount Verde, in watching his AAU games with Maine United. He was not wired to go score 40. That's not who he was. It's kind of who he's developed into. And so you're kind of at a loss for words when you're talking about is what's left for him to what other levels can he get to? He's playing at a remarkably high level, and especially for a guy who's 3 weeks into turning 18.
Yeah, people forget he's 17 years old still. My question:
he turned 18 in December.
Oh, he just turned 18, so he's a very young 18 years old. My question, because of course we cover the Charlotte Hornets here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, and it feels like the Hornets are tanking for Cooper Flag. I'm just putting it out there because, like, when you put when you put LaMelo Ball on the injury report with an ankle injury, when his ankle surgery was like a year ago and he never twisted his ankle, and all of a sudden he's got an ankle situation, or he's on there with a wrist injury and he had a wrist surgery like 2 years ago, it's like you're kind of playing with the whole load management situation. They're doing the same thing with Brandon Miller. And somebody, I can't remember who it was. It was an NBA player that I saw in a clip that was on a show yesterday or the day before. They were talking about Cooper Flagg. And they were basically saying Cooper Flagg is the best complementary player to an NBA team in terms of he can do a little bit of everything. If you send him to a place like the Wizards, where he's got to be the number one guy like every night, it may not work out. But if you send him to some place like Charlotte that has like Brandon Miller, LaMelo Ball, Mark Williams, they've got Miles Britt, like they've got things around him, and they need a power forward. They need a stretch forward. You slot him right in at the 4. He starts immediately. And all of a sudden you have a lineup of LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, Mark Williams at center, Cooper Flagg at power forward, and Miles Bridges at the 3. Like that sounds like something that Charlotte could cook with. Can they get him is the question, because I think Cooper might be the number 1 pick in the draft, right? Is there anybody else out there that you're looking at that might contest for that at this point?
I don't think so. I mean, in the first month of the season, there was talk about Ace Bailey at Rutgers. Dylan Harper at Rutgers also had some really big games. I think he had a triple-double. But, you know, maybe it's being too close to Duke. I think that certain places are well-equipped to set up their freshmen for successful seasons and set them up for success moving forward. And I think other places aren't. And I think when you see, you know, Markelle Fultz came out of Washington, I think his team in his freshman year was under 500, and he was the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah.
I think of Ben Simmons in that LSU team. I don't think they made the NCAA tournament that year.
No, they didn't. No.
I think that when you go to the blue blood places that know how to set you up as a freshman for success, then it's gonna vault you into the category of you're the number 1 overall pick. And I think that's kind of what's happened with Cooper. Duke has put all the pieces around him. They built their roster around a guy who came to Duke as a 17-year-old. I mean, they brought in floor spacing guys. They brought in veteran guys like Mason Gillis, who, you know, while Malik Brown is out with a knee injury, they're talking about playing Mason Gillis, a 6'6" guy who's coming from Purdue, at center to keep Cooper in the same groove that he's been in, playing the 4. Like John specifically said it on the teleconference this week. They don't want to screw up Cooper. They don't want to mess with what he has done and how successful he's been playing the position that he plays. So they would rather have Mason Gillis play the 5 minutes than move Cooper down a spot. It's just Cooper's set up for success. I think whoever gets the lottery win is going to be set up for success with him. I do agree. Like I think that somebody who drafts him and thinks that he's going to be a number 1 offensive option right away is maybe going to be disappointed. I say that with the tinge of, you know, I was clearly wrong about him and how advanced offensively he was going to be this season. So maybe I'm wrong there too. But I do think if you put him on a team like the Hornets, who have some pieces already in place, that's going to be a better situation for Cooper and for the team that he goes to.
So I'm going to bring RL back in here for the final question here as we're doing our ACC basketball roundup here on Wednesday, January 15th on the Desmond Johnson Show. Speaking of Duke, they're leading the conference 7-0, undefeated in conference play. They're 15-2 overall. Out of the group, I'm just going to limit it to 2 losses and above. Out of that group there, so it's about half the league pretty much. Out of that group, what team do you think stands the best shot to match up with Duke, to give them problems? And you're picking from a group of like Clemson, Louisville, Wake, Carolina, Pitt, SMU, Stanford. Some of these teams Duke's already played. Are there any? Is there a team in the ACC this year that you feel like can give Duke some kind of problems with whatever they do? I'll start off with you. Is there a team this year that can really contest with this Duke team, or is this Death Star Duke, as they're called sometimes when they get on roads like this?
Somebody's going to get Duke. I don't think they're going to go undefeated. It's so hard. I think the way Louisville is playing now, they played today. I think Louisville will give Duke a good game. the way they're shooting from the perimeter, and they clearly are the second best team in the league right now. So I'd have to say Louisville.
Connor.
Yeah, the kind of catch-22 here is they played Louisville once, and it was the ACC opener back in early December, and that's the only time they play. Because, again, to RL's earlier point, I mean, this is the watered-down ACC where you only have 3 teams that you're going to match up with twice, and it's a shame. I don't think they're going 20-0 either. I think it's going to be one of the Saturday road games that they have coming up. I think they lose to either – it's not going to be BC. I guess maybe BC gets them. I just don't see that happening. I think it'll be Wake or Clemson.
Yeah, they got Boston College this upcoming Saturday at 8 o'clock. They got Wake the following Saturday at the Joel at 4:30 in the afternoon.
They've got big Saturdays coming up. Like it goes – take this one out. They go to Wake Forest. They have the first Carolina game on February 1st.
Mm-hmm.
And then the following Saturday,
February at Clemson. Yeah. So that and Clemson is in that batch. Was ranked earlier in the year in the top 25.
Saturdays. They're probably. Did you get the last part of what I said?
Honestly, I think if anyone's gonna beat them, I don't think anyone's gonna catch them in terms of ACC lead. I think they're just going to be too far ahead and they're too deep. But if someone's going to actually catch them and actually catch them on a night slipping, probably Carolina, just because of the nature of the rivalry. Those games are so hard to predict. They're never really blowouts. I mean, I could probably count Carolina Duke blowouts on one hand in terms of the past, 10, 12 years. Usually they're pretty tight games. They ebb and flow. One team might go on a 16-point run and then the other team catches up to them. Like, It really does, like they say, it really does deliver. It really is the best rivalry in college basketball. That might be one. It does seem like you mentioned before that Wake has been pretty good at home against Duke the past couple of years. Again, granted, this isn't the same Duke team that showed up to the Joel the past 2 years, but that could be something there too. Maybe there's something with the Joel that just Duke hasn't figured out the past couple of years. But as it stands right now, Duke is number 4 in the country. And if I'm not mistaken, we may have lost Connor, but if I'm not mistaken, I think Duke's the only ACC team ranked. Am I correct, RL? Like this week?
They are the only team ranked, and I believe they're up to number 3.
They're up to 3. Yeah, they did move up to 3. I'm sorry, they were at 4.
Regarding the matchup with Carolina, Carolina has had trouble against teams that are taller than they are at just about every position. I would point to the game against Auburn, where that was a big problem. And that's going to be the situation when Duke and Carolina play. So it's just a terrible matchup for Carolina. And having watched Duke last night, the biggest contrast I see offensively, just in the way they run their offense, is the ball movement is so much better for Duke than it is for Carolina. There's still too much dribbling being done for Carolina. The ball sticks a little bit. And last night, boy, the ball was moving so well, and that just makes it harder to play defense.
Yeah, that was the point. That was the point John made in the post game. Was they said they've basically fallen in love with sharing the ball and understanding one extra pass. It actually got Duke in trouble a couple times. They had shot clock violations because everybody just kept passing the ball. But if you're a coach, I think you'd rather see that than see 3-pointers getting jacked up there with 20 seconds on the shot clock or the ball stagnating and staying in one guy's hand for 12 seconds. So that's where
the contrast to another person like Ian Jackson, he'll make decent passes now and then, but he gets the ball. He's kind of sizing up his defender and figuring out how he's going to beat him on the dribble and everything. And last night, Cooper Flagg, he wasn't holding the ball very long. He was passing it very quickly, and that makes him more dangerous.
So we'll kind of see how this. The next, again, like Connor said earlier in the show, the next 2 weeks are going to tell us a lot about the top of the ACC standings, and a lot has to do with Wake Forest, with them having to play Duke and Carolina next week, and just getting through this weekend. How many? Before I get you guys out of here, how many teams in the ACC make the tournament as we stand right now?
I saw one website estimate that ACC would get 6 teams, and I think that's a little bit far-fetched. I would guess 4.
Oof.
I've been saying 4. I maybe it's going to go to 5 because when I was thinking it was going to be 4, it was back before Louisville went on the run they've been on for the last 2 weeks or so. So I guess I'll say 5, but I would hedge it with I think somebody is going to wind up in Dayton.
Oh, and one of those playing games.
Yep.
It's so hard for me. I'm turning 47 on Sunday. I cannot remember a time, and I was asking DG about this earlier in the week. I can't remember a time when the ACC has just been so bloated in terms of membership and just like, what's the word? Not as revered nationally in terms of polls and everything else, really. I mean, Duke is Duke, Carolina's Carolina. They'll give them the benefit of the doubt more often than not. Carolina rattles off 5 wins or whatever. They'll be in the top 25 in the next, month or so. So regardless of who they play, like that's just the way it is. If Duke continues what they're doing, they're gonna be the number 1 team in the country in the next 2 weeks. Like it is what it is. But some of these others, again, I know I talked about Wake. I don't know where their marquee win is, but they have won, their past 5 out of their last 6 games. I don't think they're getting any votes. SMU was red hot at the beginning of the year, but they didn't really play anybody. Now they've gotten into the conference play and they've lost their last 2 ACC conference games. Pitt is in the mix. Again, you got Clemson. Louisville is probably the biggest surprise, especially after what they went through last year, for them to be at the top of the standings the way they are. And if I'm looking at it, Duke, Clemson, Louisville, Carolina, that's 4. Wake's probably on the bubble. Pitt is probably on the bubble. And SMU? And then after that, it's like this hodgepodge of just silliness between NC State, which I don't know what they're doing, Virginia. Well, they're doing NC State things. Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, Syracuse, Georgia Tech, and then you get to the bottom of the league, where it's funny. Well, it's not funny, but 2 of those teams at the bottom of the league, Virginia and Miami, are 2 teams that got affected by their head coaches basically resigning either right before the season started or in season, like Jim Larrañaga did. And Miami has not recovered since he resigned. I don't know if they've won a game since he resigned.
They haven't.
Yeah.
They lost 11 straight. Last 14.
Oh, and that's not going to get any better. They just got blown out by Duke last night. So I don't know what's going to happen.
You talk about the oddness of the ACC. Keep in mind, we're going to hear about teams on the ACC tournament bubble because 3 teams won't make it.
Oh, that's right. They changed the format.
We'll hear about, they've clinched a spot in the ACC tournament. It's something we've never said before. It's so weird.
I can pencil in Miami as one of the teams that's going to miss going to Charlotte, and I don't think they'll have any problem with it. The problem with Miami and the problem with probably 4 or 5 other teams at the bottom of the ACC, they're talented enough to beat somebody. Like they could get Nigel Pack back, and they will give somebody just a resume crippling loss in like mid or late February or a March game. And it's going to be awful because it's going to be a loss that outweighs some teams like previous 3 or 4 wins. And that's where, people talk about the SEC cannibalizing itself at the top, but the SEC has all these teams that played non-conference schedules that are going to set them on a pedestal that is already higher than anybody in the ACC can get to, basically. And the ACC is going to cannibalize itself when the bottom, not everybody at the bottom of the ACC is going to go 0-20 or 1-18, 1-19, they're going to win some games.
Yeah, it always happens. Somebody at the bottom's going to squirrel off a win on a Wednesday night that nobody saw. It might even be Duke. Duke just has an off night, shoots 25% from 3 or something, and NC State or somebody sneaks up on them and beats them. It happens. So I don't know, but it's weird to live in a world where I'm going to have like 4 teams in the ACC making the tournament and like 12 teams from the SEC, and then what's going to happen. It happens every year. Those 12 teams from the SEC will be gone by like beginning of second weekend, and those 4 ACC teams will be in the Elite 8 or whatever. And then the narrative shifts back to, we should have paid attention to the ACC the whole time. The season ends, whatever happens, we get back to preseason again. It's the same thing. ACC is weak, SEC is blah, Big Ten is blah, and then we get in a tournament where rubber hits the road, and it kind of shows from there. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen this year because this is a fairly weak ACC. Again, probably the weakest I can remember since maybe 2000 was a pretty weak year, where it just seemed like the league.
I'm pessimistic that it'll play out like that this time around.
You think that it'll get better?
Yeah. Not the scenarios you laid out recently. I don't think that's going to happen this year.
I think the ACC will need somebody other than Duke to make that run too. Like if all the ACC is done after the first weekend, other than Duke, it's just gonna repeat the narrative that we've heard, that we're gonna hear for the next 2 months. Is Duke is the only team in the ACC that is actually a legitimate, title contending Final Four type team.
And then at that point, you kind of need, if you really want to get more teams into the league, you almost need them to beat Duke, because that's really where your best win's going to be. If you beat Duke, like at Duke or something like that, that's a quad one, and that can help a team like a Carolina or a Wake Forest or whoever trying to get over that hump. But then you're damaging the league by beating the best team, the only team perception-wise in the league that can do anything, and that's Duke. So if Duke is out here losing to Miami or whoever, what does that say about the ACC? So it's a mess. It's a mess, but it's a loaded schedule. A lot to be decided here. Again, you got Wake tonight at 6:30 p.m. on ESPN. You got Carolina tonight at 7 p.m. on ACC Network. Duke is off until Saturday. They'll be at Boston College at 8 p.m. And we'll keep tracks with all of them. Hopefully we'll get RL and Connor back to keep us afloat with ACC basketball. I know you guys got to get out of here because your lunch is over. We'll go ahead and send you on your way. We should be back to Friday afternoon with our NFL divisional round preview. I believe George Teague, former All-Pro safety, be on the house with us to talk about that and a little bit more, some more surprises. But this is the Desmond Johnson Show. We'll see you on Friday.